Good morning, it's February 21st, and this is To My Liberal Friends. So how old is too old to be president? I raised this question on Monday, and the comments overwhelmingly said that there should be an age limit, not only for the presidency, but also for Congress. And it's a question the Democrats are being forced to deal with because most of the continued gaffes by President Joe Biden are attributed to his age. Joe Biden would be 82 if reelected, and if he would have served the entire term, he'd be 86. And behind all of this talk is another fear. Kamala Harris has poll numbers that are lower than Biden's, something most thought would be impossible. She makes President Biden look absolutely clear thinking when you listen to her word salad speeches. She has done a complete disappearing act as the vice president. She was put in charge of the border at the beginning of the administration and managed to avoid going to the border except for a brief stopover in El Paso, Texas, a long way from where migrants are crossing the border. This is what happens when you succumb to identity politics and select someone as your number two based solely on race and gender instead of real qualifications. In an earlier poll by CBS News, almost half of Democrats said that Joe Biden should not run, and among those that said he should not, 93% of them gave his age as the reason. Now, I believe that Biden will run because he likes being president. And like most elderly people that are suffering from various forms of memory losses, he doesn't realize it himself. Another salient fact is that it's too late for other Democrats to get on the ballots in time to be considered. The filing deadlines have passed. That would mean it's up to Joe Biden himself to withdraw, and knowing Joe Biden as I did when he was in the U.S. Senate, he's not going to willingly step aside. It would also create chaos with the Democratic Party heading into the party's convention this summer. But the talk is growing about his age, and what was once a whisper is now starting to sound like someone shouting. This week we saw two major candidates bring it up. In California, Democratic Congresswoman Katie Porter, who's running for the Senate, said, quote, "It's a conversation that we should be thinking about. We're having that conversation and that debate about the Supreme Court. And I think it's hypocritical for us to not be thinking about having it given that we have some of the same long-term representation that we have," end quote. She said this during a televised Senate debate. And that means she's also looking at the age of so many in Congress as well and called for age limits in that debate. Of course, Porter's age 50 and her opponent's Barbara Lee is 77 and Adam Schiff is 63. That would put Lee well over 80 during a Senate term and Schiff at 70. Just something to think about. Tom Suozzi, who just won the special election in New York, called the president old on the day before winning the election. Suozzi also confronted the administration on their border policies, and I think he realized taking those positions would help him win the vacated seat he once held. For now, many Democrats are pretending the report that called their president, quote, "a well-meaning elderly man with a poor memory," isn't required reading in political circles. I didn't see the report as become the Democrats' version of Republicans. I didn't see the tweet when former Donald Trump was in office unleashing embarrassing tirades on Twitter. One Democrat who's not running for re-election, Dan Kildee from Michigan, was honest enough to say that the report by the special counsel has altered the race for the White House. He said, quote, "I do think the report opens the door for a closer examination of both candidates and their capabilities," end quote, a direct reference to both candidates since Trump is 77. I would also refer you back to the impromptu press conference Biden decided to have after the report came out. He marched into the room thinking he was in command. He opened it up with, "I'm a well-meaning and elderly man, and I know what the hell I'm doing. I've been the president. I put this country back on its feet," end quote. But in a news conference designed in part to reassure the nation about the 81-year-old president's fitness for office, the scene in the ornate room was cramped but quickly became unruly. Biden found himself interrupted by shouting reporters, all competing for airtime. He repeatedly mischaracterized the findings of the special counsel report released several hours earlier about his careless handling of classified documents. He referred to President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi of Egypt, but misstated the country he represents. He said it was Mexico, prompting another round of Democratic agitation that Biden is too old. Here's what we might be facing this election. Both Mr. Trump and Mr. Biden have exceeded the average U.S. life expectancy. Although they have access to top health care resources, both work in high-stress environments. While most of the questions surrounding the president's age have focused on mental cognition, my concern lies in a different direction. Does either candidate have a plan for what happens if he dies in office? Are we going to be voting for Kamala Harris to be president? Are we going to be voting for Trump's running mate? Look, we all age differently. In our early years, some of us walked and spoke at different ages. Similarly, our physical and mental abilities deteriorate differently. At 81, Mr. Biden is the oldest president in U.S. history. Many have noticed that he struggles with balance and memory. His mental abilities have decreased since the beginning of his term, raising concerns about how effective he would be in his next term. Would he be able to make significant decisions regarding the country, or would his mental ability fail him? Donald Trump at 77 isn't as hindered as Mr. Biden is at 81. He's made some gaffes, though. While Mr. Biden's mental capacity is declining, that doesn't imply that Mr. Trump's will. But each year that we age could change our capabilities. As the November election approaches, the candidate's health and cognitive ability should be considered by voters. This has been To My Liberal Friends. Thanks for listening.